I lose. I don't feed on approval, don't need statues and gold. Temples crumble to ruins, centuries from today. History will remember, carved in stone.
Hello, and welcome back to the Creating Strength podcast. Today is more of like a sit down, let's have a chat. This is not an instructional or teaching video as much as it is a awareness video and I need to check on you. Like, let's sit down for just a second, have a seat, chill out. I've got my diffuser going. It's a eucalyptus. Just calming. Smells amazing. I love my essential oils. But I gotta ask you, are you okay? How are you? Because I know that there's some of you out there who are unfortunately dealing with bad managers. You're dealing with bad leaders. And I don't want to give them the title of leader. They're not leaders. There are really, really, really toxic people running around organizations in America today. They are allowed to behave badly for whatever reason. If they're great at sales or something, they're allowed to behave badly because maybe they're bringing in profits. But as someone who specializes in leadership, like that's something I could talk about leadership for hours. Coaching and just helping emerging leaders and new leaders step into their transformational power is something that never gets old. I love it. But what is very, very, very hard for me to tolerate is bad behavior. Bad behavior by someone who has been granted a manager title, or maybe it's director, whatever your title is. I don't care how long you've been in an industry. I don't care who you are. There is no excuse for not developing your leadership skills and giving everything you possibly can to your coworkers and your team. And that's why we need to have this chat today. And today I want to speak directly to those of you out there who are dealing with managers who just have downright bad behavior. And what do I mean by bad behavior? I'm talking about those people who don't know how to communicate. They go out of their way to create an environment that's anything but psychologically safe. They're passive aggressive. They give you the silent treatment. They go behind your back to make themselves look good to the big guy or big lady, like whoever the head leader person in charge is. And they're very manipulative. And they get away with it because in front of other people, they might not say things that are outright mean, but have cutting undertones. And they'll take snips at people. They'll send emails without any regard for how the person feels on the other end. They lash out. And then when they go to their direct boss, they're manipulative in the way that they make everyone else look bad and never take ownership. This is very, very important. These types of people never take ownership for their role in anything. And here's the real problem. These people drag companies down faster than anything else. One person has the power to tank a company. I'm not kidding. And if you don't believe me, that's fine. Post a comment below. We can have that back and forth. But they absolutely do have the power. They first tank their team. And then here's what happens. Those toxic, bad behavior people make life miserable. I have other words, but they make life miserable for your really, really, really good employees. Those people who are going above and beyond, those people who care deeply about their coworkers. They release this invisible toxic gas throughout your organization. And every day they're creating drama. Every day they're treating somebody like shit. And it gets ignored. For whatever reason, it gets ignored. And this is why I say everything begins and ends with leadership. Because the people at the top, you can't afford to ignore this kind of behavior. So not only does it get ignored, but the second humongous problem that I see is it goes on for such a long time. It gets ignored and then it doesn't get addressed because their direct leader doesn't know how to handle it. They don't know how to give direct feedback and they tolerate it. And there's nothing worse than when you have someone who's got really bad behavior, it's getting tolerated and you're looking around going, why am I putting my best foot forward? Why am I trying so hard when this person's allowed to get away with everything? It drops morale. It absolutely drops morale. It's going to drop productivity. And it just, like I said, it releases this toxic gas and that might sound funny, but it's true. Their presence in the building weighs heavily on everyone around them. And my guess is if you're leading somebody like this, like let's say that this manager, whoever it is part of your leadership team, you're probably spending a good chunk of your day putting out their fires or handling their drama. You see where I'm going with this? It's a huge issue. And I'm just honestly, I wanted to sit down and record this podcast because as I see markets struggle and I see businesses struggle to get sales, and at the same time, I see them tolerating really bad behavior. And the two go hand in hand. Your business, your team is not going to see an increase in productivity, morale, and engagement unless you address the foundational root problems, which will always begin and end with leadership. And so I need to check in on you. Let me know have you ever had to deal with a really bad boss? I mean, we can call this many different things. We can say it's a bad boss, bad leader, but really it's just insufferable behavior by someone who has a title and they're hiding behind the title. And I think corporate America needs to change. We have to put an end to tolerating bad behavior. In my previous video, I mentioned, if you watch my personalized leadership strategies video, I mentioned we all spend about 80 to 85% of our lives working. Whether you're an entrepreneur or you're working 8 to 5, that's a lot of time. And it's just absolutely unacceptable to have any sort of bad behavior tolerated for whatever reason. And if you are tolerating that behavior, you need to figure out what you need to do to stop it because your people are suffering. If you have somebody in your organization that is behaving like an asshole, you have a responsibility. If you're the CEO, if you're the president, you have a moral obligation to get rid of that behavior. It's not acceptable under any circumstances. And it gets me really upset because I see it all the time. And, on a personal note, I actually left my last organization, one, because of my mental health. And, that's always hard for me to share because it feels shameful. But I had a boss who didn't know how to deal with it, didn't know how to give feedback. And when I mentioned some things that I was going through, and I mentioned that it's time to put in my notice, but I also said I actually don't want to leave, I was met with silence and passive aggressive behavior. And although it's not fine, there's a part of me that wants to say it's fine. It's actually not fine. But the root cause of all these things is that leaders are products of the leaders that they've had in the past. Some are naturally better than others. And, I don't fault this person because I'm like, you weren't taught how to deal with that. And that's fine. I forgive. That's fine. But I also know that the environment I left was riddled with bad behavior. Several managers that have absolutely horrible behavior. And for whatever reason it's being tolerated, I don't know, but I was no longer in a place where my mental health could just tolerate it and be around it. And that's just like me personally. But there's a lot of people out there in corporate America who are just tolerating the worst kind of behavior. I think silence and passive aggressiveness are some of the worst things that you can do to people. I actually had one person in particular that behaved really, really badly. And some people are just angry. Some people, like, you're not going to please everyone, that you work with. But one person I'm thinking of in particular would pass me in just out and about, just pass me in the hall, whatever, and go out of his way to glare at me and give me nasty looks and talk behind my back. And this guy was just, emotionally the age of a 7-year-old. So like, I'm fine. I don't take that stuff and take it home with me. But knowing that that kind of behavior exists in corporate America is what really honestly pisses me off. That whatever you have going on in your personal life, like, we all have a responsibility to try and deal with it. And that's, part of the reason why I had to leave, because I needed to deal with my own stuff. And I'm glad I did, because here I am, I'm going out on my own, and it's been the best thing for my mental health. But the majority of Americans are working 8 to 5 in corporate America. And bad behavior, like when you get that manager title, you're not allowed to pass people in the hall with nasty looks. You're not allowed to do that anyway. But when you have a title, you now have a responsibility to get your shit together. And you don't get to be passive aggressive. Okay? And you shouldn't get promoted to any role. You don't get the title and then get to treat people badly because you're not getting your way. And, I'm not going to go into the differences between men and women, but the reason why leadership development is so incredibly crucial at an early stage of an employee's career. So that's why I love focusing on emerging leaders and new leaders, because that's got the greatest impact of all. Like, you're going to send these newbies into an environment where they get to affect positive change. But if you're tolerating bad behavior and you're not doing any leadership development whatsoever, then you're just saying it's okay. It's okay to treat people badly. And what I would say to you, if you are in an environment like that, is don't tolerate it. There's no job that's worth your mental health. Absolutely none. And there's nothing you can do to affect change in a big enough way. It's such a big problem that, honestly, unless an organization like hired somebody like me and is able to take that direct, transparent feedback and say, yes, we are going to tackle this and we're willing to do what it takes. Because the honest truth, what it takes is firing that person. Kicking them out the door and saying, we are not going to tolerate that behavior, because every bad manager that you have and every bad leader, anytime something bad happens and you're tolerating it, you're saying this is who we are as a company. It's defining your company. The values that you have on the wall don't mean anything if you are tolerating bad behavior, because that's the same thing as rewarding it. We're saying you can behave however you want, and there's literally no consequences to it. And so if you're in an environment that is like that, I encourage you to be looking for a different job. Reach out to me. I'm happy to coach you through that situation. And that's why I wanted to sit down and speak in a more like, not a podcasty way, but a more of like, these are just real things, real things that are going on in the world. And we have to talk about it. We can't tolerate it. I'm not going to keep my mouth shut. It's called the First Amendment. And you don't need to tolerate it. You are valuable. You are worth it. And if you feel the way that I described, if you feel like you're putting your best foot forward, you're doing everything that you can, but you see these bad behaviors being tolerated, you don't have to stay at the company that you're at. Take a good look around. A company is only as good as the worst behavior that they tolerate. And if they're tolerating bad behavior, it's showing you their cards. It's showing you exactly who they are. And this is why I advocate for personalized leadership strategies so much, because every leader needs to understand each employee and exactly what they need. And it's time to change. So listen to me, corporate America. It is absolutely time to change. Stop tolerating bad behavior, especially by your, I'm not saying leaders, by your managers. Because only a manager would behave badly. And so these things need to be said. We need to talk about bad behavior more because it needs to be addressed. It's not okay to ignore it. You can't ignore bad behavior. So if you are tolerating bad behavior in your company, if you are struggling with any of the things that I spoke about, please send me a message. Let's chat. I just launched my Kennedy Leadership Academy. We're talking about personalized leadership strategies on September 18th at 12 p.m. And I would love to have you there. I would love to help you get through whatever hurdles. If you're seeing bad behavior being tolerated, let me know how I can help. Because that's why I'm here. You will get through it. You will find a place that you can be authentically you. You will find a place that doesn't tolerate that stuff. And I'm happy to help you on your journey to getting there. So thanks for this little chat today. Thank you for joining me on another episode of the Creating Strength podcast. And as always, until next time, keep creating your strength.